Boy, that little hammer works pretty good. Okay. Good morning. Gerald, you're a bright and shining star. I love it. Oh, thank you. Now, y'all just jump in there anytime you want to. Ooh, boy. Have you... I've got to go move to the front row here now for a second. Y'all please bow with me. Gracious Heavenly Father, for another day, thank you. We'd just like to say thank you for everything you do for us, the many blessings that you give us, the opportunities that you give us. Keep us in your arms. Let us know that we can always depend on you, even though we don't do as you sometimes wish we would. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your love. Mostly thank you for the grace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, good morning again. We're going to start, and for the wall that hadn't been there, go up to the microphone, tell us who you are, and then ready begin. Mr. Hooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the Rules Committee, I bring to you for your consideration SB 190 by committee substitute from the State Institutions and Properties Committee. This bill comes at the request of both the Secretary of State and the Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia. It simply moves the operation of our State Capitol Museum, which is located on the 4th floor of the State Capitol, from the Secretary of State's office at his request over to the Board of Regents, which we feel like is a good place. Give you a short background, not to take too much time. At the time this Capitol was renovated, this Capitol, of course, was in deplorable condition, as many of you remember. We couldn't exactly figure out what to do with our State Capitol Museum. We requested Ms. Olson, Dottie Olson, who was in charge of the museum, to straighten it up, clean it up, get rid of the things that were not Georgia things, like buffaloes and whales and squirrels playing poker and the world's largest collection of German Lugers, and put them out in Stone Mountain, where they are now, in a warehouse, and to tell a story to the people of Georgia, particularly the school children, of the history and story of Georgia. She did that with remarkable talent. But also she suggested, and it's been in the budget several times, that we are to go ahead and complete and locate a State Capitol History Museum separated from the State Capitol, but nearby in Atlanta. I will tell you that we have purchased, the state of Georgia several years ago, purchased the old Coca-Cola building down in the parking lot by the depot, and it's vacant, and we've had an extensive study done of that. We did have money in the budget several years ago to go ahead and do this. We're the only state in the nation that has no state museum. And we need one to tell the complete, total story of the state. And it's the feeling of the Board of Regents and the Secretary of State in concurrence that the Regents, with their educational expertise, together with private colleges and universities, would be most suited for this. They all agree on it, and this is what this bill accomplishes. I will tell you there's an amendment that my good friend, Representative Joe Wilkinson, he is going to handle the bill on the floor. He and I are appointed members of this commission, informal commission that's set up by the Board of Regents to handle it on the floor, and he's the House appointee and I'm the Senate appointee. I'm going to concur with his floor amendment, and basically it just changes lines 39 and 40 on page 2 to read back to the Committee on Assignments. That's an internal matter in the Senate, and we don't want to get into too much of that, but we're going to leave it like it is. This Section 3 doesn't have anything to do with the Capitol Museum. It merely deals with the Capitol Art Commission, which is charged with the responsibility of handling the art exhibits, statues, and so forth. And the Secretary of State wanted an appointment on that, and we graciously went along with his request. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions or get Representative Wilkinson to help me.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Hooks, I just wanted to briefly thank you for being, without a doubt, the most credible student of history in this building, and for looking out for the long-term interests of our institutions. And it's not unnoticed, and we sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it.
Ms. Manning.
Senator, one quick question as a matter of clarification. Does that mean that the portraits that are hung in the Capitol will be now at the discretion of the Board of Regents?
No, ma'am. If you look at Section 3, that will still remain under the commission of the Capitol Arts Commission. That's a separate entity altogether. The Capitol Arts Standards Commission, we put in law several years ago, has charge of all the portraits. This is simply the fourth floor display, which is known as the Capitol Museum. It has nothing to do with our art collection or the statues.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hooks, we've seen we saw last year, maybe it was the year before, the Regents' ability to cut things out of their budget that were very popular. Is there anything in if they so choose, could they defund this museum now? We saw what they did with the nursing programs and the 4-H and stuff like that.
Representative, that's always the purview of the General Assembly in writing the state budget. Now, the way this bill is constructed, the funds that are currently very small funds that are allocated to the Secretary of State's office would be transferred over to the Board of Regents, and they feel like they can enhance that and do that. Can they cut it out? They probably could, but I imagine they could cut out everything that's under their purview, but I wouldn't think they would dare do this. This is coming from the members of the Board of Regents have requested this, not the staff or the chancellor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hooks.
Thank you. There will be a floor amendment which I will support by Representative Wilkinson.
Ms. Houston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I bring to you a very simple bill, and it's House Bill 599, and it is to make the Cook County probate judge nonpartisan. I think many of you will agree that we feel that judges should be nonpartisan, and I hope you'll have this for your consideration. Do I have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Houston.
Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I ask for your favorable consideration on Senate Bill 156. This saves the taxpayers money by doing away with an audit that is already found in the local government's annual audit, and I ask for your consideration. 156. It's on the first page toward the top.
It does away with an audit. Is that what you said?
It's a 911 audit that DCA requires anybody that has a 911 center to do, and that information can already be found in any local government's annual audit. So it's just a duplication.
Okay. We've had some questions as to what it really did, so just
Okay.
hang with us. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Jason Carter. I'm Senator from the 42nd District, and I ask your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 31, which is on the first page near the bottom. For those of you that don't know me, I'm originally from Calhoun, Georgia. My grandfather for many years had the privilege of serving as the representative from Calhoun, and I know that he is proud and honored that the current representative from that place is the chairman of this distinguished committee.
You about as good as butter in his mullet is.
The Senate Bill 31 is an evidence bill that applies when a minor or a child is accused of a crime. And where you have a child accused of a crime, under current law, they have a relationship with their attorney, and those communications are privileged, but their parent is a third party to that privilege and thus cannot be involved in any of those attorney-client communications. And so this bill extends that privilege circle to include the parent only in those circumstances where the child is accused of a crime or is seeking advice because they think they might be accused of a crime. It helps the parents and the families of the child be involved in the decision-making process, and it was my great honor to have it pass out of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate and the House. I've worked on it in a very bipartisan way, and I would ask your favorable consideration. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Yes, we do. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Carter, is it not true that in a situation absent the passage of this bill, if a parent wanted to be in the conversation and the child wanted the parent to be in the conversation, if the parent did join the conversation, it would completely vitiate the privilege and that child's rights would no longer be protected with regards to their attorney?
Correct. What is happening under current law is that the attorneys are forced essentially to exclude the parent because they can't risk the waiver of the privilege, and so they are being forced to exclude the parent from any of their communications, which makes it very difficult, frankly, on everybody involved in that system. If you've got a 12-year-old there who's trying to calculate legal decisions that all of us would have a hard time sometimes dealing with. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm here today to ask for your favorable consideration for House Bill 586 on behalf of Rockdale County. It is a simple bill as well. It is to provide for the nonpartisan election of the Chief Magistrate of the court.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 82. This is the usual housekeeping bill from the Secretary of State's office following a review of the prior election cycle. This bill was put together after meetings with election superintendents throughout the state, the Secretary of State's office, election division, and the legislative committees of the Voter Registrars Association. It's provides some cleanup and clarification of some certain sections of the law. Practically speaking, the voters and those running for office should not see any change in the election process. So I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Y'all, this is Senator Ligon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Senator.
Since y'all don't know who he is.
I'm sorry.
You're supposed to tell them who this is.
Sorry.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Grant.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Johnny Grant from Milledgeville, Georgia, representing Senate District 25. On the back of your sheet, 4 from the bottom, is Senate Bill 178, dealing with health care facilities and specifically the licensing of assisted living communities. Presented this to the committee on a couple of other occasions. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but urge your favorable consideration.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the committee, good morning. My name is Jesse Stone. I'm from Waynesboro. I represent the 23rd Senatorial District. I've got two bills on the calendar today. The first is on page 1 in the first group. It's Senate Bill 166. That bill strengthens regulations of continuing care retirements communities. This does two things. It allows for stronger reserves in the event of failure, and it also provides for disclosures in advance prior to senior citizens investing their life savings into these facilities. This is a bill that was negotiated with the insurance department over the last several years. It has full industry support, and there has been no opposition either in the House committees or the Senate committees that have considered it. I'll answer any questions pertaining to SB 166.
You've got questions. Ms. Smith.
Chairman, thank you, Senator. I'm curious about your statement about in the area of failure. So this is an investment on the part of the inhabitant. If you could explain that a little bit.
That's correct. There are about 16 of these centers that provide a range of living alternatives for senior citizens, from independent apartment type living all the way through assisted living and nursing care. Typically, the contracts require a substantial upfront entrance fee, which in the event of a failure would be lost, and that is what this guards against by setting up a reserve requirement.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the other bill is SB 139. It's on the second page, fourth bill down from the top. This is a very simple bill dealing with appeals in child custody cases. This is a bill that our Superior Court judges have a very strong interest in. It allows the custody orders that they render to remain in effect during appeals. It clarifies a little bit of confusion in the law as it currently stands. It brings Superior Courts in line with juvenile courts in the way appeals of custody decisions are handled.
Mr. Whip.
Thank you for bringing this bill, and Senator, also thank you for allowing us to attach to the bill a provision cleaning up Georgia's long-arm statute for domestic cases. Is it not true that by this cleanup we're going to be able to make sure that orders handed down in Georgia are in particular regarding cases involving children in child custody and child support matters can be adjudicated in Georgia should there be a subsequent problem? That's correct.
It allows Superior Courts to retain jurisdiction over custody during appeals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good bill.
Mr. Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I'd like to get a little bit of an explanation about, can you give me an example with respect to the ongoing order? Are you talking about a temporary order with respect to custody while it's on appeal? Where are you going with that?
It would apply to temporary and final orders in both the direct appeals and discretionary appeals.
And let me follow up on another section there. The Section 5, I understand where the whip was going at Section 6 with respect to that. Notwithstanding the subsequent departure of one of the original parties from this state, that's line 34, 35, and 36 on the second page. What are you trying to accomplish with that particular?
This is a House amendment that is intended to clarify jurisdiction over non-residents in domestic actions.
You're not changing the idea then that it is a material change of circumstance with respect to...
Oh, no, this doesn't change that.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Chairman, simply a cleanup of a bill we passed last year, simply just making sure that the court retains jurisdiction if the party leaves the state, but the child, for instance, is still in Georgia.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Abrams, did you? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Davis.
Good morning, sir. I come to ask for Senate Bill 38. It is not on the blue sheet. I apologize for that. This bill has been before this committee already. There was an amendment put on in committee that the governor objected to. We sent it back and passed it back out. This is a bill dealing with the state school superintendent's powers, and I would respectfully ask that we move this along. This is a chief executive officer of a very large department, $5.8 billion department, should be able to hire and fire his employees as he sees fit to serve his purpose.
Mr. Davis, you need, there's got to be a form filled out. It did get recommitted. It got out, but nobody redid the form.
Yes, sir.
That's where it's at. Whose is that?
Sir?
Never mind. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I bring before you today Senate Bill 79 under modified structural rule. This has to do with boards of education. It is a statewide bill. Currently, there is only one school board out of 181 in this state that has less than a 4-year term, and this will simply move that school board to a 4-year term like every other school board in the state. Also, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have Senate Bill 81, which is at the bottom of the page. This calls for the Board of Pharmacy to be able to order mental and physical examinations of pharmacists and pharmacy techs. The Board of Pharmacy is one of the few allied health boards that is not able to do this now, and we're just trying to bring them into compliance with the other boards. On the back page, Mr. Chairman, is Senate Bill 93. This is the annual drug update. This is an extremely important bill for the Board of Pharmacy to be able to move certain drugs into certain schedules. We have to do this every year. And finally, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 95. This is a bill that passed the House and the Senate last year but was vetoed by the governor. It simply allows law enforcement officers to obtain written documentation from previous employers for a potential employee. As you know, it's very important that we hire the right people in order to protect our citizenry, and this will give us the opportunity to do a better job with that.
You've got several questions, and everyone who's asking the question identify the bill so Mr. Carter know which one we're talking about. Ms. Hughley. Wait a second.
Senator, I'd like to start with the first bill, SB 79. If you can make me understand the relationship between going to a 4-year term and then the DeKalb issue and then the Atlanta issue all rolled up into this one bill.
Yes, ma'am. It did turn out to be a Christmas tree. You are correct. And my portion of the bill is Section 1, having to do with 4-year school board terms. And that is what was passed through the Senate. Now, the DeKalb part and the City of Atlanta part were added in committee. And I would defer to Representative Lindsey and Senator Fran Miller to discuss those two parts of it. I'm sorry, I just don't feel qualified or knowledgeable enough to discuss those two areas. But I'll be glad to talk about Section 1 if you want me to.
That's the simple part. Your part is the simple part.
Thank you.
One second, Mr. Smyrie.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Representative Hughley sort of hit my question, but I have a larger issue with the matter as it relates to local control and how this House is. I mean, this is 3 different delegation bills wrapped in one. That's basically what we have here. Mr. Chairman and members of the Rules Committee, over the years we have seen from local control to no control. Words over the years we've had delegations that had. It seems like more and more we're circumventing the local delegations and the local rules, and I just think one day we ought to sit down and talk about how we're going to look at whether or not we need to have local delegations anymore, because it serves no purpose to some degree, because you can circumvent it in the larger frame of the political debate. So, but Representative Huger kind of hit my question. Thank you very much.
Mr. Whip.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the sections dealing with DeKalb County and with the section dealing with school system placed on probation, both of these measures are in, quite frankly, trying to bring local school systems into compliance with the public policies we've already enumerated through SB 84 last session, and that's what we're seeking to do here, is go ahead and make sure that that public policy that we already passed overwhelmingly last session are fully implemented throughout the state immediately for the best interest of the children in our public school systems.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First to Senator Carter, looking at Section 1 only, what is the best practice analysis that underpins the need to change the length of service for a school board member? Currently, it's 2 years. What's the best? What analysis has led you to believe that it needs to be increased, since this has been the practice? Can you speak to why this is necessary, since the delegation itself disagrees?
Well, it's only been the practice for 1 year. This was something that was changed last year. And we have a unanimous resolution from the local school board to change this back to a 4-year term. So I would submit to you that this is local legislation. This is local control. This is the local delegation, the local school board asking us to do this by unanimous resolution. So if you want to argue the point of local control, this is local control.
I did not raise the issue.
I understand. But the point I'm trying to make is that they have asked for this, and this is the only way we can get it done.
So my question, though, is what is precipitating the desire? What was wrong with the 2-year term that has led them to believe they wanted to go back to a 4-year term?
It was changed last year without their knowledge. I screwed up and I signed a bill I shouldn't have.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may ask an additional question of Mr. Lindsay with regards to the other portions of the bill.
Again, I didn't hear it.
If I may ask Mr. Lindsay for a question regarding another section of the bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lindsay, looking at Section 2, are there other counties that do not have homestead option sales and use taxes that have a board larger than 7 members?
My understanding is no.
So only one school board in the state of Georgia has larger than 7 members?
It is my understanding that, yes, only one.
Thank you.
Ms. Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Carter, I'm going to harp on the same issue. Being a member of the DeKalb delegation, and unfortunately the chairman is not here this morning, our delegation didn't even have the opportunity to vote on this particular measure. And so you can't really say that we had the chance to have local control over this particular issue. And I'm just curious what your delegation vote was.
What our delegation only voted on Section 1. We did not vote on the DeKalb or the City of Atlanta section.
But you did have the opportunity.
We did introduce local legislation to change our local school system back from a 2-year term to a 4-year term. We have 2 members in the Senate, both signed off on that local legislation, but we have 6 members in the House, and only 3 are willing to sign it, and we have to have a majority.
Mr. Mosby, which seat do you want to be in? All right. You want to talk from that one?
I'll talk from this one.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. To the point, I am the chairman of the DeKalb House delegation, and we do have a unanimous resolution from our school board asking us not to make any changes to this. Also, we have redistricting coming up this particular summer. Seems to me that waiting on the Section 2 part of this bill, waiting till this summer for us to deal with those issues would be the most prudent course than trying to make some change right now.
I'll accept that as a statement and not a question. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
That it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I come to you today asking consideration for two bills today. As you recall, I was here yesterday asking for one. I promised not to be here tomorrow asking for three. Modified Open Rule, Senate Bill 161. It creates education partnerships for college and career academies. It formalizes the college and career academies process, creates several voluntary steps to help the proliferation of these college and career dual enrollment processes. There are currently 23 of these schools across the state of Georgia, and they have occurred through different manners. This bill would create an operation that would bring about a collaborative effort from local organizations, be it individuals or companies that need employees with specific skilled labor. Also work alongside the Technical College System of Georgia, the Department of Education, and we have gone through a process using the wisdom of the House Higher Education Committee and perfected the legislation, and I do ask for your favorable consideration on Senate Bill 161 under your modified open rule. Under modified structured rule, we have some issues to address. I have a fix that we do not have an actual amendment to, but Senate Bill 163, which we discussed in length yesterday. It's on the back page, about halfway down of your list. Senate Bill 163 is the campaign communication issue that we discussed yesterday, and we do have a fix, and I'd be happy to discuss the. I do think that we have a fix that I'd be happy to discuss if that's the committee's and the chairman's desire.
You've got questions, starting Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of a parliamentary inquiry. We offered an amendment on 163 yesterday that was adopted by this committee. Is the bill before us the committee substitute as amended yesterday, or is it the underlying bill that passed the Senate?
Okay, the vice chair said we are waiting for his amendment before we get back to committee to pass it out. And so we're talking about just right now without the amendment which we talked about yesterday.
Okay. I guess I was under the mistaken impression that we had adopted that amendment as sort of a clarifying, perfunctory add. I'm fine at the will of the chair. I just wanted to get a clarification.
You're right. You're right on that one, but we're waiting on his to do the whole thing before we send it out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a simple question, Senator. How will PSAs be viewed in this particular piece of legislation?
There was a possible amendment to this piece of legislation by the cable industry, and they wanted to address some PSA issues. The House Higher Education Committee decided that it was brought late in the process. It would have created an exemption specifically for public service announcements, but for the most part, PSAs would not be addressed in the legislation.
So if somebody, follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, so if someone is running a PSA, then they could be charged with a misdemeanor under this particular bill?
I wouldn't think so unless been charged for a PSA. The bill addresses expenditures. And so if there was a charge for a public service announcement by the organization that was transmitting that public service announcement, then you would be expected that at some point that line at some point would say this public service announcement was paid for Representative Drenner. That would be, so therefore, I mean, your question, I mean, my answer to your question is no if it's a public service announcement. Therefore, it would not be a public service announcement if it was getting paid for. So,
but perhaps my opponent might view my PSA as a campaign ad. Could that be true here?
That's probably an issue for another arena, I would suppose. That would not apply to this legislation, I would assert.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Drenner's question, we're talking about express advocacy of the election or defeat of a candidate. So a public service announcement, by definition, would not, fit in that category. It's a public service announcement as opposed to an actual political ad advocating for the election or defeat. So it's a separate category of broadcast message.
The Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up on the Vice Chairman's response, a public service announcement is covered by the Federal Communications Commission regulations. There are regulatory restrictions on what can qualify as a public service announcement. They cannot advocate political speech in any way because there's a reduced cost for running those ads, which cable companies and local broadcasts receive. So they are restricted they're restricted entirely from any form of political speech at all because of the benefit that they get for running those PSAs. PSAs were designed to allow nonprofit organizations to put out what are considered truly public service messages. You running an advocacy piece on your own would not qualify as a public service message unless the FCC thinks that it falls squarely within their public service announcement regulatory framework. Political speech cannot be run as a public service announcement because you qualify for reduced rates for doing so, and it would be a violation of the Federal Communications Act if they did so. And that's why I think this is, while I understand the concern, it is not a valid concern because political speech is regulated by the FEC. Public service announcements are subject to FCC and FEC rules, and so you would not be allowed to use the public service rates, and thus it would not be a public service announcement.
Mr. Golick was.
Is it not true?
Mr. Chairman, one question, if I may. Was that a public service announcement?
I was going to say Mr. Golick was a lot quicker, and I think they said about the same thing. One lawyer gets paid more than the other one, apparently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm probably too early with this particular request this morning, maybe too late for the session. This is simply it's not on the blue sheet. I thought it would be on there, but it's not. What it is a petition that's asking us to support federal recognition of a Lower Muskogee Creek Indian tribe, which is located down in Cairo, Georgia, and they got about 2,500 members. What they're doing, they're wanting us to agree with the wishes of the Lower the Creek tribe for gaming in Indian property within this state. It has to be prohibited unless such changes are necessary in the Constitution and laws of this state and in complying with it. And of course, the last paragraph says that we here, the members of the body, recognize this group and support them as the Lower Muskogee Creek Indian tribe and their request for federal recognition, and agreeing with the tribe that gaming on Indian land within the state requires a passage of a 2/3 vote body on both chambers. It is House Resolution 739, but it's not on the blue sheet. You'd have one.
It's not on the blue sheet. Nobody has one in their book, so we are a little bit early.
Okay. Do I need to come back, or is it too late in the session to get it done? That's what.
Mr. Chanel.
The Senate side, I think.
Wait a second, Doctor. Wait a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doctor, let me ask you, we have dealt with this issue up here several times in the 19 years I've been here. It is a very volatile issue, to say the least. But let me ask you, how are you going to determine who is a member of this tribe?
Well, now that I don't know, Representative. I was just asked by my leaders there in the tribe this last week, and I called, and then they came up Monday. And of course, when Senator Bullock, I was not going to put in this request, but Senator Bullock put it in on the House side, and then on the Senate side, and so then Monday they came up and accused me of not doing my job and representing my constituents. But anyway, make a long story short, it's just a request that we recognize them, Representative Chanel.
I understand that. I've been through that several different times, but you're probably going to be contacted by some people from the Cherokee Nation.
Let me say one last thing. Let me say one last thing, and then I'll exit. They are concerned that there's a gaming tribe moving in from Oklahoma over on the eastern side, the coast side, and they do not want this gaming reservation to come in, and so therefore they wanted this resolution by Senator Bullock on the Senate side and one on the House side. So that's all I can tell you. Thank you.
Ms. Smith, have you really got to? Thank you. He left anyway. Mr. Schaefer.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I hope I'm not violating any rules, but Senator Josh McCoon is in a House Judiciary Subcommittee right now presenting a bill. Could not be here and asked me to ask y'all for Senate Bill 64. It's a bill I co-sponsored. It's a department bill for the Secretary of State's office that deals with the reinstatement of lapsed corporations, and I would appreciate your consideration.
You got one question here.
Senator, did I assume Senator McCoon also would have wanted you to ask for Senate Bill 80, which is the DNA analysis bill. It's requested by the GBI. It's a critically important bill for law enforcement. I know to Chairman Neal over here, so I would presume that you'd be asking that.
Absolutely. I'll ask for that one, too.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Benton.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask for House Bill 552. That's Jackson County, election of chief magistrate and probate, nonpartisan.
Mr. Willard.
Mr. Chairman, there's a Senate bill that's not on the blue sheet but on the yellow. I'm sorry, our yellow sheet is Senate Bill 26 came out of my committee Tuesday. We'd like to get that recommitted as done with the permission of the author of the bill.
What number was it?
Senate Bill 26.
I need
the yellow sheet. Yeah, this is the Senate yellow sheet.
That is a motion. Any objection?
Made a motion.
Any objection? Thank you. It is recommitted. Mr. Parrish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for House Bill 610. This will just allow us to elect a probate judge in Emanuel County in a nonpartisan fashion, and there's no opposition. Everybody's in favor.
Okay. Ms. Protein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to ask for Senate Bill 184. It's the Senate Pro Tem's bill. He would be here, but he is otherwise he's having a meeting and asked me to request on his behalf. I am carrying it in the House. It is a very simple bill that simply says that local boards of education cannot adopt a policy that allows length of service to be the primary or sole determining factor when implementing a reduction in force.
Any questions? Raise your hand. Don't hit your button if you got a question. Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, since I was on the committee that heard this on Senate Bill 190, I'd like to ask that the committee look at this and see if we could pass it on out. Senate Bill 190.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move on Senate Bill 178, the health care facilities, and also on Senate Bill 166 on the continuing care providers. I'm getting close, so I'd like these carried.
Mr. Setzler.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to show my strong support for SB 38 by being carried in this chamber by Representative Davis, and also SB 184.
What was the last one?
184.
Okay. Ms. Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I ask humbly for Senate Resolution 114 and for Senate Bill 80.
Mr. Beard, is it Ms. Dempsey? Excuse me.
Yes, I'd like to ask for Senate Bill 161 that Senator Butterworth just presented.
Okay.
Partnership with our Career and College Academy.
Okay. Y'all listen up real close. We're going to set a supplemental calendar for today. Okay? Senate Resolution 114 under modified open. Any objection? House Bill 552 under modified structure. Any objection? House Bill 586 under modified structure. Any objection? House Bill 599 modified structure. Any objection? House Bill 610 modified structure. Any objection? And I had another one, but they didn't ask, so that's it. All right, that's going to be front row's fixing to get it. I normally have to blame you as you're down here. All right, that's for today's supplemental calendar. All right. For the next legislative day, SB 79. Any object? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Where's that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, under Rule 33.3, I'd ask that I move the House, we set a rule for debate on Senate Bill 79 for debate not to exceed 1 hour, time to be apportioned at the discretion of the Speaker, as we have on bills in the past.
We have a second to my left. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Ayes have it. So SB 79, under modified structure with a 1 hour limit at the discretion of the Speaker, is on. SB 184, under modified structure. Again. Is there any objection? No objection. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, under same motion as before, pursuant to Rule 33.3, I'd ask that this committee limit debate on Senate Bill 184, time not to exceed 1 hour, allocation of time to be made at the discretion of the Speaker.
I've got a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That is the calendar for the next legislative day.
Which is a cryptic way of saying that it may not necessarily be tomorrow.
Thank you.